Hey, hello, and welcome to the online version of Charm School, which is a class that I'm putting together for creatives. And I really want to be clear, this is for people who don't necessarily identify as an artist, although if you do, this will totally help you make more art and be like more confident about it and put it out in the world and make better art as well. And when I say better, I mean not by just like someone in charge judging your art, but better to you, like more true to you, stuff that you're proud of. You're improving your skills and your productivity and all those things, right? So you'll become a better artist per your standards, right? And that's naturally going to like shine out into the world. But really, what this is about is you allowing yourself to be more creative and engage in the artistic process, whether you feel like you have no creative bone in your body, whether you feel like you cannot even draw a stick figure. Maybe you used to be an artist and you gave up on it for whatever reason. And I have some of that in my story that we'll talk about. But I want this to be a class for you to learn how to reignite your creative self or ignite it and bring it online for the first time and claim your ability to make art and be creative as a human right. And not only a human right, but as a need, like something you need in your life to live the biggest, best, boldest life and your fullest potential. So that's what this class is about. I called it Charm School, and the charm stands for creativity, for healing, authenticity, and radical magic. And that's what I'm about here. This is less about art with a capital A and like impressing anybody or even making any money off of anything, although you can. And I encourage that if you want to. But this is about creating magic for yourself by tapping into this need and drive and God given right to create and be creative and express yourself in a creative way. So the goal of this class is to kind of like give you permission to do that, tell you why you should care about that, and then give you prompts and suggestions as to how you can bring it back into your life and create more like as a habit and make it just part of your life, like breathing or feeding yourself or getting good rest. I want you making art as well, and we're going to talk about why. So welcome to Charm School. This is actually less of an art class as it is like coaching for your creative self, creativity coaching. But I am going to give you ideas about stuff you could make and things like that. So we're going to focus on being really resourceful. We're going to talk about shifting our identity. Like those of you who are like, I'm not an artist. Oh, yes, you are. And I'm going to tell you all about it. Okay, so my name's Amanda Gold. I probably should have led with that, but a lot of you already knew that. I'm Amanda Gold, and I am an artist, and I have been one for a really long time, and it's taken lots of cool twists and turns, and I've abandoned it along the way, and I've had lots of shame and wounds around my creativity, people telling me I wasn't good enough and me believing that and like hiding it away. But I've been interested in making art since I was a kid, and I have been trying to do so that whole time. I've been a tattoo artist. I've painted murals. I've done mixed media stuff. I've had shows. I've been in a gallery. Like, I've done all kinds of things with it. And the best thing for me about being an artist is simply the process. And that was the other thing is most recently I started studying art therapy and just really looking at the research about how art helps us and helps our very souls and how it can do so much for us when we're letting ourselves be creative. It's such a beautiful thing. And so now I'm a coach, and I joke about how I became a coach to make my art because I had so much shit going on in my head that was keeping me from making it. I had to coach myself through it. And then when I saw that coaching worked so well, I started studying it, and now I'm a practicing life coach also. So I'm an artist and a coach. I love working with creatives. I'm also a woman in recovery. So I'm 6.5 years sober. I was a drug addict. I was an alcoholic first and last. In between, there was all kinds of anything. And then I have been homeless and in abusive relationships. I was a teenage runaway. So I've gone through a lot, and art has helped me get through it. Art has helped me when I first got sober. It helped me stay sober, and it helped me heal. It's helped me work through a lot of childhood trauma. And now I'm using it just to like enhance my life and work through my feelings and to help others as well. And it's just fun. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. That's kind of what I'm up to. And what I got really super passionate about with art was this idea. I basically teach and stand on two fundamental premises. So my company, my business is called Kick Ass with Both Feet. And what I'm talking about when I do that is like we're standing on these two legs, these 2 feet that we're kicking ass with. One is that we are born to be creative. And if we are not creating, if we're not being expressive in some way, and that definition is very broad, you can be super creative in baking a cake or how you decorate your house, right? It's not limited to like visual traditional art. But we are absolutely born to be creative. And when we don't allow that, it shows up as disease or dysfunction somehow. Okay? That's one of the premises we're starting from here together. The other one is that if we are willing to feel any emotion, negative, and increase our capacity for the positive, then we will be unstoppable. Because as a coach, I've seen how any goal that we're not going for, or any time we're sabotaging ourselves, or anytime we have less than we really want, it's because we're actually afraid of feeling a certain feeling, like rejection or failure or inadequacy or shame, any of those. So if we can teach ourselves to be willing to feel all of our feelings as they come and process them instead of resist them, then we can do any fucking thing we want to in the world. And I believe that art is a beautiful way to help us feel our emotions and help us go out into the world and kick ass with both feet. So I am going to talk about God as we go through this. And I want to be really clear that like, if you don't believe in God, that's not a problem. I think we can all look out into the world and see that there's some kind of creative force at work, right? Like none of us really understands how another human being can grow and flourish inside of another human being, right? Or none of us really comprehend how a tiny acorn can turn into an oak tree, or how the planets are spinning beautifully and in this perfect like pattern and rhythm, and how the sun rises and how stars are created. Like we know how, like from science, and I love science, by the way. But there's also some kind of force at the root of all of it, right? And actually, the more we learn from science, the more we're like exploring this sort of like mysterious, magical force that some of us, myself included, choose to call God. I'm fine with the God word. But to be very clear, I'm not talking about any kind of like religious God or any like judging or punishing God. So I just want to be super clear. Like I am talking about some kind of force that's greater than us. In AA, we call it our higher power. I have a friend who calls it the magnificent everything, and you can just choose to call it life or nature or love or universe, whatever. But we're just going to be on the same page as far as like talking about something bigger than me, right? So part of why I'm so passionate about art making is because I believe that this thing that's bigger than us, this thing that I'm calling God, is a creative being, and it created us, and we are in turn meant to be creative. And it's just sort of this like love letter, this back and forth exchange. Like, you created me, I'm super creative. Isn't this wonderful to see our creations making creations? It's really cool, right? And I think that when we are not honoring that and we're not expressing ourselves that way, we're kind of like cutting ourselves off from our source. And that's why it feels like shit. And that's why a lot of us fall into addiction, or we feel more anxious, or we feel just unsettled, or we feel angry, or we're smoking, or we're eating more than we'd like, or we're just like wasting our lives with video games and television. And by the way, none of these things are inherently good or bad or wrong or right. It's just how we use things, right? So anything can be turned into like an addiction or a numbing or distraction agent device. And so I'm just talking about this idea of like thwarting our potential, or like folding in on ourselves and kind of getting contracted and small and stagnant. And I believe this can be directly traced to us not being creative. Yes, there's other things at play. There's systemic oppression, there is abuse, there's trauma, there's real physical ailments, there's real like chemical mental health imbalances. But for the most part, if we're not being creative, we are adding to that, and or we're causing our own style or flavor of disease and dysfunction, right? And so, my addiction, for instance, probably a lot of it came from childhood trauma. A lot of it could have come just from my genes. We don't really fully understand where that shit comes from. But some of it could have been just like funky ass beliefs about my art too. And I will say, no matter what caused it, art definitely helped in healing it. So part of the work I was learning in art therapy was I did a paper on how art therapy helped people with schizophrenia and how it helped them manage their symptoms like hallucinations, agitation, things like that. And it really helped them. So even if there is stuff going on that like art can't fix or not making art didn't cause, art can absolutely help to heal and serve and support in that time. And I do think that stuff like that gets worse when we don't have a creative outlet. So think of yourself like water. And when there's healthy, good water where the ecosystem is in balance and it's fresh and it's clear, it's because there's a channel in and there's a channel out. And if you think instead of like a stagnant puddle or like a disgusting lake that's gotten overgrown and muddy and murky and nothing's living in it, it's because it has no outflow and it has no inflow. And our creativity and accessing our artistic potential and urges and honoring those is us opening the channel both ways. So we're letting inspiration come in. We're tapped into like our highest selves. That's another thing you can think of if you don't really jive with the God thing. Just think of like the highest version of yourself, the best version of you, the you that's like totally alive and awake and thriving, right? Anyways, we're tapped into that and then we're like sharing it with the world. And so we have this beautiful outpouring where our cup is always being filled and then we're expressing it in the world. And it's just this lovely exchange and we are like clear, healthy water that way. Okay, so I've talked about who this is for. I've talked about how it's our nature. I want to talk too about how it's a right that I feel like has kind of been taken from us in this world that really values productivity and earning. And it's a very, so we live in a patriarchy and it's very imbalanced. And this is not like, this isn't like men are bad. When I talk about the patriarchy, I just talk about how there's an imbalance in the masculine and feminine. And mostly white men are in charge. And so that has translated into an imbalance. And some of the more feminine things get devalued, like our care for nature, treating animals as a valuable part of us, our life on this earth. And art is one of those things that's sort of a more feminine thing. And again, this isn't about male and female as we define them on this like limited gender spectrum, but just like if we're talking about qualities and how that's in balance and how everything embodies both, the feminine is the receptive, is the creative, is the intuitive, is that more flowier side, right? And so when we live in a world that's dominated by the masculine paradigm, things like art get devalued. And so that's why you see so many people, women especially, saying stuff like, I'll get to my art later, or I'll do it when I have time, or when, and look at what you do if you ever try to schedule art, what kind of gets in your way if you're a procrastinator, like I have been. All of a sudden you want to clean the house. All of a sudden you want to like tidy things up and the laundry is calling and you need to rearrange. And it's just so interesting how those things have gotten put higher and as more important than your desire and need to make art. So watching out for that, and part of the goal of this class is to help you reclaim that time to be creative, as this is time for me to do something that's very important to me and to the world. Because here's the thing, when we are allowing ourselves to be more creative and make art, however we define that, it improves our health, it improves our well-being. So we're talking physical health and our mental health. There have been so many studies about how mental health challenges have been addressed and eased and even healed by making art and being creative. We can walk through difficult emotions like grief, trauma, pain, physical pain, etc. It helps in recovery, as I've already said. It helps us tap into our intuition, which I've kind of touched on. It helps us make sense of the senseless. So anyone want to look around at our political climate, there's a lot of people struggling with fear and powerlessness and hopelessness. And art and creativity is not a frivolous waste of time. It is a powerful way to navigate this stuff. And it's a radical act. So if you're letting yourself take the medicine that is your creativity and art making, you're able to show up for the causes that you care about. So many of us, when we find ourselves in times such as these, we just want to like lay down and give up. Like a lot of us, or we start off with good intentions and then we burn out. There's so many social workers and activists who are just fried and they're hurting and they're just like open wounds because they're not taking care of themselves. And art and creativity can be such a beautiful way to take care of yourself so that you can sustain your activism and your care for those who are less fortunate, and to show up in the world in a powerful way to make change and to be fucking radical and to see and ensure that love wins and not fear and hatred and petty smallness, which is what we're facing right now. So I really want to like highlight here that we're not just talking about like la la la, let me just make some art because it's fun. And that should be good enough, by the way. Like, we're allowed to have fun and this life is allowed to be pleasurable. And I think that that's why we're here, is to experience joy and pleasure and love. But it's not in a hedonistic way. It's so that we can bring everyone up to that level. And in that sense, if you're taking care of yourself through art and art making and creative expression, you're actually able to show up better for the world and make a difference in the world. That's powerful and necessary. All right. So, and I just wrote too that joy is a radical act. Like, when you are faced with things that want to cause despair, and you can stay joyful in that, but use your joy to harness your righteous anger and to harness your grief and your indignity at like how some people are being treated, and fight back against that. That's powerful stuff. And the best way to move through that is from a place of being resourced and joyful. And that is fucking radical. And it's exactly what the world needs right now. So hopefully I've painted the whole picture of like why art is important and why you should be interested in reclaiming this creative piece of yourself. And I want to talk about why a lot of us are so disconnected from it. So go back to a time when you did feel creative or artistic or expressive. First of all, most of us can identify a time, even if you say you're not an artist and you're not a creative person, there probably was a time when you were and someone shit all over it. And usually the person that shit on it was someone that we respected in some way. So it was either probably like an older sibling or a parent or even an art teacher. It is scandalous how many art teachers are out there crushing the creative spirit in children. They're usually blocked artists themselves, and so they're just like lashing out, but that's a different video. But first, just like notice if you have any grief. A lot of us in recovery have a lot of grief when we try to reclaim our creativity because we feel like we abandon ourselves in our addiction and we stop making art, and we feel like we wasted opportunities, and we feel like kind of shitheads, or we feel like that was a chance that I had that I wasted and it's gone, and we kind of like shame ourselves. So what I want to do now is to just sort of reflect on that. And if you have a journal or a pen, it'd be great for you to write on this a little bit after this class, and just sort of like be there for that part of yourself that went through that, and just say like, you know what, that was then, and that hurt, and I'm here to like scoop you up and take you home. So this is what a lot of us have to like get through first, is that initial wound to the creative self that we want to like acknowledge and really name and like really comfort that part of ourselves, because usually what happened is that shit hurt like hell and we had to just keep powering through, and often we didn't even get a chance to like talk about it with someone or process it. So now I want you to be that person for yourself and like love on yourself and comfort yourself and bring that part of you home. It's never too late. Everything that's happened between now and then is water under the bridge, and it can serve you and it can add to your practice today. So let's just kind of like help put that to rest and bring that back and start to heal that. The other thing is I want you to just experience in your life, I was talking about all the benefits of being creative, and I want you to see if you can find a time when you were going through a shitty situation and you had some kind of creative outlet or expression, and how did that feel, versus going through a really shitty time with no creative practice and no artistic expression or outlet, and how did that feel? So I can for sure look back and see how, life is life, and life is going to happen, and we're not trying to create a life where we never feel pain, because that's not possible. But if you have something with you like art, you can get through it in a much more graceful and quicker way, and actually learn from the experience and like take something from it and not lose yourself completely in it, versus when you're trying to navigate life without that piece. And the reason that's so tricky is because this is natural to you to be creative, and it's important, and it needs to be expressed. So just reflect on that. You might write about that as well. Okay. So lastly, I'm excited. I should be able to wrap this up before the 30-minute mark. The last thing I want to challenge you with is the other thing that gets in the way of us being creative and making our art is resources. So we have come to believe that art is for the chosen few with just the right amount of talent and just the right amount of permission and skill. And then you have to have money to buy all your supplies, and you need lots of time, and you need a studio, and you need all this luxurious stuff. So part of this class is to sort of help you reclaim your creativity from a resourceful and scrappy way. I want you to know that we weren't given this thing under the condition that we had the money and the time and the space to like have this fancy art studio and all these supplies, right? And if you can afford great art supplies, that's awesome. That's super fun. Go for it. I'm not demonizing nice paints and brushes and stuff like that. But I never want that to stop you. So if you only have 5 minutes in a day and a feather that you found outside and like some coffee grounds, you can make art, okay? So I'm just going to do a quick little show and tell. We're talking about resourcefulness, and I have a challenge for you in which you are going to go find 10 non-traditional art supplies that you just have laying around the house. So this is the first chance to get creative about what you just have laying around that you could make art with today. So I'm going to talk about it in 3 different categories. I'm going to talk about it in the sense of non-traditional canvas, or like place to put the art on. And then I'm going to talk about non-traditional tools, like to make the art with. And then I'm going to talk about non-traditional materials, so that your medium, right? So let's see where I want to start. So this is to highlight the paper. You can see there is like a metal kind of bracket on here. And it's just paper with these cool plastic edges. This was from a scrapbooking kit that was going to go in the trash. It was a page from a scrapbooking kit. So repurposing things. I am not a scrapbooker, but I'm an artist. This isn't done, but I like it, and I like this paper. And this is not traditional paper that you would think of to make art on. So go for it. Find things that you're not using for their original intent and repurpose them for your intention to make art with. Oh, here's one. Here is some wood that I found on the ground. You can see what it used to look like and what it looks like now. And yeah, it has a hole in it and like a scuffed up bit, and I painted it, and it's awesome. Ooh, look, you can see the hole. That's fun. Okay, so there's that. And then I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but I like the sound, and it was a pencil case. And I tend to keep things that are circular anyways, for stencils, like to trace a perfect circle. I love having lots of things that are different circle sizes. This is from a toilet paper roll. These are really great for when you've made art that's bigger and you need to roll it up. These slip right over it. They're way easier than rubber bands, so that's kind of handy if you're making bigger stuff on paper. As far as non-traditional supplies go, this is paper that was dyed with coffee, so that's what all this is. And it makes it a real nice sepia sort of aged thing. Plus it makes cool shapes. So you could just play around with abstract art. A fun way to do that is imagine this drawing isn't there. I just used it as background, but imagine that wasn't there and you had these cool shapes, and you just sort of let yourself turn the paper around and see if it reminds you of anything, and then kind of draw and embellish upon that. Oh, and this is fabric on canvas. Sorry, this is probably tricky, but what I really want to show you is this. So this is like a plastic strand that I found on a construction site. It was really long, and I crocheted it into a chain, and then I sewed it into this spiral shape on this piece, and then had all this other fabric that I found and made that. So there you go. That was fun. And then lastly, I just have some things. So this was from the dollar store for barbecue sauce in the kitchen section, but it makes a really awesome paintbrush. And it's nice because they're like plastic, so the paint comes off it differently than a traditional brush. Another great painting tool is a toothbrush, because you can like load it up with paint, and then you drag your finger across the bristles like this, and it does this really cool splatter thing. I found this in the street. It's from when you bleach your hair, so like a beauty supply store. So you might have one of these in your drawer. But again, different bristles, different effect with the paint. Super fun. And then I just love collecting like crafty things. Like you can paint with feathers, you can mix them in the paint and make things textured, you can glue it to shit. And I also pick up things like this that I find on the street. I used to be a punk rock train hopper kid, and so I just love finding cool things of metal. So I have all kinds of weird nuts and bolts like this that you can use to make sculptures or paint with. You could roll that and paint and then roll it down the page. You could decorate it and let it be its own thing. Like the possibilities are endless. So that's the class today. What I really hope that you take away is you deserve to be creative. You will be happier and healthier and more fully alive as a human if you give yourself some kind of creative outlet and explore your expression. So this is something I want you to see as something that you're reclaiming, that you're going to keep and move forward with, not just like, oh, a fun art class, right? It's your divine right. It's good for you. And you don't have to have a lot of money or time or space to do it. It is yours. And part of our creativity is being creative about the supplies that we have access to and that we use. So I would love it if you would share in the comments any takeaways from this class, or if you want to share your non-traditional art item that you found. My challenge to you is to find 10. I will be posting another class for you. I can't remember if I'm doing it tomorrow or next week. There's definitely going to be classes next week. But this is going to be a 6-part series. So stay tuned for that. There's more. Oh, and I have a Facebook group for this class, which has people in it already who went through it with me live. And I think it's just on Facebook. If you just look up Charm School, it's a private group. So check it out. I'll let you in. And I think that's everything. Oh, and like I said, I'm a life coach. So if you ever want more support in this, if you want one-on-one coaching, you can set up a free consultation with me to just find out what that looks like and how I can help you and how one-on-one coaching can serve you. But otherwise, oh, and to do that, shoot me an email at kickasswithbothfeet@gmail.com. And that is it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. I hope you share in the comments, even if it's just like an emoji to show that you were here and that it helped. And I will see you next time. Kick ass. Bye.